Thank you for being here, sir. I saw your story on the Innocence Files, and it was just incredible. Like I said, you're driving through Center City, Philadelphia. There was a robbery in Center City, Philadelphia. You made a right turn. You're stopped by police, and you're incarcerated for 28 years. I've been in those streets in Philadelphia. I've had horrible interactions with police officers. So it really just struck me in my soul. But before we talk about that, you were 21 years old in 1991. Give me
Yes.
an idea of the kind of young man you were.
At the time, I mean, growing up, I grew up in a suburban area in Delaware. Mother, father, sister. We were heavily into the church. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, so we were everything that we did revolved around the church and so forth. So, I had been rooted in that, and at the time, I just moved to Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia just about maybe just 1 month shy of a year. I was working as a Brooks Armored Car Guard and going to school studying criminal justice. My dreams and hopes were to eventually become a police officer, believe it or not. But that's
Wow.
what my goal was. And, using the avenue of working as an armored guard, I was using that as, just to get experience and so forth. So that was my aspirations at the time, to become
So you mentioned you wanted to be a police officer. What was your perception of cops, of law enforcement, but before this experience?
Well, I mean, I had always, growing up back then, you had officer friendly, and used to come into the schools, and I just looked at them as somewhat as heroes, so to speak. People, willing to help others that were in need and helping the community and so forth. So I always looked at that, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be, of service to people and help those who not necessarily couldn't fight for themselves, and that's what I had hoped to do. I don't know if it was necessarily a police officer, but I wanted to do something in law enforcement. I wanted to be able to make a difference from that side of society, what I'm saying, so to speak.
So there is this shooting that happens. It's a University of Pennsylvania shooting, and a
Yes.
student, a foreign exchange student, he's shot and killed during a robbery. I actually remember this because this was, some people argue this was the spark to really gentrify, to really quote unquote clean up Philadelphia. When they had a University of Pennsylvania student shot, they said, oh, wait a minute. Like, oh my God. Now, forget if it's somebody in a random neighborhood. They just said, oh my gosh, now this is really bad. We got to take care of this. And
Right.
so that night when the shooting happens, you're driving, you make a right turn, and you're
Right.
stopped by police. For folks that don't know, tell us what happened that night.
Well, that night, that day, I was actually in Delaware that day. I'm assuming I believe it happened like last minute. Nevertheless, I was in Delaware the whole day. I got back to Philly maybe around close to midnight that evening, and I got back to my apartment and working for Brooks. I had been there close to a year maybe, but nevertheless, I was supposed to start my vacation the following day, that Monday. It was my first vacation ever in life working on a job, and I was a paid vacation for that week. So I got home to Philly, and I met up with a friend in my apartment building. So it's night. It's a nice night, summertime. We didn't want to sit in the house. So I was going to visit a friend down in Southwest Philadelphia. So we took the route of Broad Street and made it right on Lombard Street, and that's where we were going. And like I said, we maybe 3 or 4 blocks. We had got to the light, and I stopped at the light, and I saw a police officer going north. So we had the music up, so I turned the music down, and then I saw a police officer going down south. So once the light turned green, we proceeded through the light. I looked at my rearview mirror, and I see the cop that was going north reverse, and he pulls up behind me. And then the cop that was going south, he did the same thing. He backed up on the Lombard, and one was on my left, which was the driver's side, and one was directly behind me. Maybe a half a block down, I see the lights turn on. So we pulled over, and they jump out with guns drawn, and from there it was just like, what's going on? And you know, the rest was history.
Yeah, and they take you to the scene, and
Yes.
the people at the scene can't identify you. The girlfriend of the young man who was shot, which is such a sad story, she
Yes.
can't identify you either. She says that isn't. I don't believe that's him. The people
Right.
who actually did it, one of them, I guess they had on red shorts. You had on
Yes.
like green sweatpants. I mean,
Yes.
there's nothing there. I wanted to ask you this. One of the things that I always hear is that you got to do the right thing when you're in contact with police. You got to obey everything. Just do it right, and everything will be okay. Do
Right.
you believe, Chester? Is there anything you could have done differently? Is there anything that would have changed the outcome? That's what we normally hear out there. Just do it this way, and everything will be okay.
Right. That's the assumption that I was under. You always cooperate with the police, and like I said, at that time, I had never really had police contact of that nature. So therefore, it was like, these guys are, they're going to do the right thing. As long as you're honest and truthful with them, they're going to figure it out, and it'll all be worked out. So I went in with the mindset, just tell the truth, and it'll all be worked out. Never would I have thought that, there was an underlying motive that they had, and that was just to simply close a case, regardless of innocence or guilt. I mean, that came later in me finding that out. But that night, like I said, I went in there and I told the truth. I told everything I knew, and it was there. At that time, I didn't see the things that they were trying to do as far as like trick me up into getting me to say this and say that and so forth. So, it was just a process. Like I said, it was a learning process for me naturally that ended up, costing me 28 years. But like I said, at the time, I was under the assumption that, the police they're there to do the right thing. And that just wasn't the case here.
And one part that really shook me up is that one of the detectives, when they approach you, I guess you're on holding at this point, he
Yes.
walks in and just punches you in the face, right?
Yes. Yes. When I was downstairs in the holding tank, and when they brought me upstairs, they put me in this room that was like, it had a metal table and a metal chair that was bolted to the floor. And they handcuffed me in this chair. And I was in there for maybe 6 minutes. And when the detective came in, my first thing was like, okay, let's get this thing started so I can get out of here. And the first thing he did, he comes in and he just punched me right in the mouth real fast. And he said something about like, so you want to kill people in our city? He looked at me and then walked out. And I just sat there stunned, like I just couldn't believe this happened. And that was my first interaction with this detective. You know,
Yeah, that was
introduction, so to speak.
right, exactly. And again, in the on Netflix, in the Innocence Files, you talk about going into what's called the Roundhouse, and you're afraid, and you're emotional, and you're crying. And when I was listening to that part, I was just thinking about the kind of veneer that you have to put up, the kind of mask you have to put up when you are behind bars, just for your own safety, right?
Right.
Uh, how when you first get in there, how are you able to just to navigate that fear, knowing that you're being lied on? Just you as a young man, how are you getting through that?
Well, I mean, I hate to say like, but I guess just from watching a lot of TV, is what I learned. From watching a lot of TV and a lot of cop shows and so forth. That I knew once you got inside there that you had to put the face on, because if not, you become easy prey. And my first experience that night, naturally I was scared. It was an environment I'd never been in, nothing close to it. So naturally my fear was to protect myself. Naturally, I was worried about being harmed, but at the same time, like I said, in my mind, it's like, what's going on here? I'm like, I'm being accused of something I didn't do, and it's getting deeper and deeper. So, like I said, my only thing was just, like I said, to keep my back against the wall, so to speak, and keep my head down, and not cause any problems. And I was hoping that would get me through. And fortunately, at the time when I entered into Holmesburg Prison, which was one of the toughest county prisons in the country at the time, I was fortunate to have some older guys that I guess had seen my story on television, and they as soon as I got there, they embraced me and just kind of told me the game and just said, listen, stay out the way, keep your head down, don't mess with anybody, and those are the rules that I abide by, and fortunately it worked out for me as far as my safety went. Mentally it was very draining, but my physical safety, that was at the time I was more worried about than anything else.
What's interesting is that when we think about these stories, we also often think about it through the lens of white and black, which
Right.
makes sense that there's some truth there. But what's wild about your story is this prosecutor named Roger King. He
Yes.
was a black prosecutor, and he was infamous. He was known to just lock up as many people as possible. And
Right.
he really went after you. I mean, he was legendary in Philadelphia for the kind of things he would do, and he was in alignment with like the DA, who was known as the Queen of Death. It was just
Yeah.
crazy. But I remember
Yeah.
hearing about this guy because he was so vicious. And it's kind of an odd question, but I'm just wondering, as a young man, were you able to, when you see this black prosecutor advocating against you so aggressively, and at one point, even a black woman judge, when you have another hearing, decided that the sentencing should stand. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, were you seeing it through a lens of like, yo, why are these other people who look like me doing this to me? Because that's what I was observing it like, wow, like Zora Neale Hurston said, all my skin folk and kinfolk. So I'm just wondering, were you seeing it that way? Like, yo, they're like, why are they doing this to me?
Yes, that's definitely the case. Like I said, during my time in prison, like I said, the county prison, like I said, it took almost 2 years before I went to trial. So naturally, I was learning the process and about the courts and so forth through the guys and that had been through it. And I had heard about this prosecutor Roger King because initially I had a white prosecutor, naturally, Hugh Colahan, I believe it was, and that's who I knew was my prosecutor. And it wasn't till a few months prior to going to trial that I had heard that we were getting switched to Roger King. Now I had heard this name Roger King like all throughout my time there, and they said this is the one prosecutor you don't want. And I was like, okay. So when we had Hugh Colahan, I was somewhat relieved that we didn't have Roger King. I said, okay, maybe this thing it'll work out. But prior to going to trial, when my lawyer came and told me that they were switching to Roger King, after hearing all these things that I had heard about him, I was scared. But at the same time, I was like, well, he's a black man. He's going to see this for what it is. He's going, he's going to see the truth, and maybe I stand a chance with him. Never did I realize that this was the prosecutor that was really didn't care about skin. It was about convictions, and like I said, our first meeting I think was when trial began, and I heard him make his opening statements and so forth, and how animated he was. I realized that this wasn't going to turn out good for me because, like I said, he didn't care about the truth. It was just about what he had in front of him, and I can see that he was just going for the conviction, opposed to seeking out the truth. And same with the judge. Like I said, when you're in the system, like you said, you see these people, like I said, you're hoping for someone that looks like you because maybe they'll have an understanding of
Right.
these things that go on. But that just wasn't the case. And like I said, it definitely caused me to be bitter. I think at some point, I said, well, maybe, uh, you know, I hate to sound like it's a issue of race, but at the same time, there is an underlying factor when it comes to race. And I said, well, maybe these white folks have maybe necessarily poisoned them, or maybe they think they're better than the average black. I don't know, but I just like I said, I felt comfort in seeing these faces, but like I said, as we were going into the process, it just made me doubt even more, and it just made me question, like, how could you even do this? I mean, I'm not, we're not kinfolk, but at the same time, we are kinfolk. We've been in the same struggle at the same time, so it was just like, it was very discouraging. Like I said, and that was part of my pain as well, seeing that these were black folks that were actually doing this to me, and they weren't trying to seek out the truth. You know?
No, I mean, Chester, I agree wholeheartedly. It's there's this thing, you see it in politics, you see it in social issues, where if a black person comes along doing the bidding of a racist white person or a corrupt DA, they could almost do more because they could say, well, look, this isn't racist. They're black.
Right,
Look at it. So it's those kind of folks are so dangerous to us as people. It's the person that will sell you out at any cost to move ahead. And I saw that and I was like, yo, it's not just one. There's a couple folks there who are doing this. And it
right,
appears, I mean, at one point in your story, it appears, I mean, he's kind of has like the black preacher kind of skills, so he can give a good speech. And they make up this line that the person who was with you, Deidre Jones, that you said, oh, this, I told this beta to shut up. You never
yeah,
said that, but they
right,
delivered it that way. So I just want folks to be aware that when we look at justice, sometimes the lens of race can be very complicated. I
yes,
wanted to talk about Deidre Jones for a minute. She's
yes,
somebody who was in the car with you,
yes,
and this broke my heart. She testified against you. She later
yes,
recanted because she was basically forced to testify. Reportedly, they said that they threatened her that if you don't say this, you're going to go behind bars, you're going to lose your children. And you see this a lot. They force folks into a false confession.
yes.
And you had so much grace, Chester, when you were talking about her that you weren't angry with her. And how did you how did you not have that anger? Because I was when I was watching, and I was like, wow, I'm from Philly. Would I have done that if they would have said to me, listen, Clay, if you don't say this, you're going to jail? Like, would I have done it? And I think that I wouldn't, but I don't really know. But how did you not have anger to somebody your friend who testified against you?
I mean, you know, I've been asked that question a number of times, and I can only give a test that to my upbringing. Uh, the way, like I said, the way I was raised. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, and he was the most humble man I've ever met in my life. I've never seen my grandfather, raise his voice. He never, showed anger. So I never saw that with him. Now, and same with my mother and my father. Our house it wasn't like that. So for me, that's just what I knew. And don't get me wrong. Initially, like I said, when that happened that night, like I said, I was going to jail and I heard she went home. Naturally, I was frustrated. I was like, how could she do this? Especially like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. I've never been perfect. But like I said, I know with my relationship with Deidre, it was strictly, friendship. I tried to be a big brother. I did a lot of things for her to, just like to be a friend. And like I said, that's very rare. When you see God, you always think something, something going on or whatever the case may be. But that wasn't the case with me and her. I thought I was a very good friend. So for her to do that, it was just like, damn, how can you do this to me? And then, it wasn't until many years later that I realized or found out that what they had done to her. And like I said, I know what they did to me that night, and I know how scared I was and how frustrated it was being in that situation. And Deidre was a frail person to begin with, very, very timid, very shy. So I can just imagine what they did to her. So I kind of put myself in those shoes because a lawyer once told me, he says, in order to defeat or combat the other side, you first have to understand the other side. So I've always tried to apply that to most things, and I just tried to put myself in her shoes, and I said, okay, well, knowing the type of person that she was and potentially is, uh, I just saw it for what it was, and I said, okay, she normally wouldn't do this to me without being pressured and threatened and so forth. So I just tried to look at it from that angle. Not only that, I think that I was so worried about being consumed with anger that it would blind me into becoming something or someone else different than who I am, and I tried to avoid that as well. So don't blame me. It wasn't easy, but like I
Yeah.
said, I just put myself in her shoes and try to understand. And I knew nothing good was going to come from me holding on to anger or being angry at her because I was in prison. So I had to do everything I could to focus on that and getting back home and having my name clear.
Do you guys speak now?
No, I haven't spoken to her. I mean, she's through different outlets, she's reached out to me, and there's been some people who've tried to mediate the our meeting, but I don't harbor no ill will towards her. It just hasn't come to that point for me as wanting to talk. I mean, I think I'm closer to doing that, but we haven't done it as of yet now.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved your family when I was watching the Innocence Files. I mean, your sister,
Yeah,
your father, and I was just wondering if you could just talk a little bit about your mother, who's no longer with us. But you know, I, she gave me inspiration just watching it, and I was just
yeah.
wondering if you could just talk a bit about your mom.
Yeah, my mom, like I said, from the day I can, I can develop the thought that I can remember as far back as I can remember. My mom was always a very loving person. She was, always there. My mom, naturally, she yelled at me a few times, but like I said, it was very rare that I ever, receive any type of harsh discipline from my mother. She would always talk to me and explain why she was doing the things she was doing, if I was in the wrong, so forth. But the thing I think that stood up for me with my mother was on dialysis for my entire life that I can remember, and she would go to dialyze. I think it was like 6, 7 hours a day, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and she would get up early in the morning, go dialyze, and that takes a lot out of you. And she did that, like I said, the majority of my life. And come home and take care of the house. We fix us dinner, wash clothes. I mean, I knew she was tired, but like I said, she never allowed us to see that. And at the end of the day, when she was done doing all the house chores and so forth and taking care of us, she would go up and just fall asleep. And I watched that for years, my entire life, and I just watched that strength. And I said, when you're in it, you don't really realize it. But like I said, when I was in prison, I got time to think about it. I was just like, how special she really, is or was. And like I said, I just wanted to make her proud because, like I said, my whole thing was while I'm sitting in prison, I didn't get to, I guess make my parents proud, so to speak. So, I did everything I could when I was on the street growing up. I wasn't a bad child, but like I said, we want to grow up and have families and become successful. So our family, our parents can witness these things. So, I was denied that, and I just kept saying to myself, while I'm in prison, I'm going to make sure that I do everything I can from here to make them proud, and that's what I try to do. And my mom supported me, from day one. She never said, did you do this? I mean, she knew me, she knew my character, and she said, I know you didn't do it, and so it was never brought up. She just supported me wholeheartedly. I would call her every single day, and I would tell her about my day in prison, and she would give me, different advice and just encouragement, and just tell me that it's not going to last forever. And I believed it, and there was days I doubted, but for the most part, I believed her because my mom never lied to me.
Mm. Yeah, that was really powerful. That was really powerful. It's I've interviewed other folks who've been wrongfully incarcerated, and I don't really know how to ask this question, but I guess for me, it's about time.
Okay.
28 years,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't know. Like, I'm such an impatient person. I obsess over time constantly, and I just wanted to know how does your soul, how does your spirit get through 28 years? It just seems unimaginable to me.
Uh, I mean, in the beginning, like when I was in my early 20s, you're full of life, you're full of, all this energy. I had all this energy, and, it was, I kept busy in there by, doing a lot of sports, whatever sports events they had, I was involved with that. I was involved with the church, things that they had in there, services and so forth. I would go to, attend that. Everything I could to stay busy, I was doing. And I think once I hit my 30s, it was just like, okay, I still was full of energy and full of life and so forth. But at the same time, I'm like, this isn't going to work because every day I'm like anticipating something coming from the courts or, from the lawyers. And, it just wasn't coming. So I just figured, I'm going to burn myself out at some point. So I just started realizing that maybe I need to slow down. I just said, you know what, I'm just going to take it one day at a time. And, if it comes in tomorrow, so be it. And I'll be home the following day. And if not, we'll look forward to the next day. So I started getting in the mindset of just taking it one day at a time and not trying to get too far ahead of that. Because like I said, I was trying to say, well, by the time I hit 25 and I'll be home. And like I said, it just wasn't happening. So once I got into the mind frame of taking life one day at a time, I think that made it a little easier. You know what I mean? It wasn't like not impossible, but I still have my moments. But like I said, I just got in that mindset of one day at a time. Let's get through the day, and then if it happens tomorrow, it does, and if it doesn't, well, we just look forward to the following day. But that's basically how I did it, and I'm continuing to do it out here, just one day at a time. It doesn't leave a whole lot of room for disappointment when you just take one day at a time.
Has it been hard? You were released in July of 2019. Has it been hard to adjust? Has it been is there anything that's been a little bit like, oh, this is so much different than back in the
Yeah,
day?
yeah. I mean, I think this week it'll make a year and a half.
Mm.
I've been home, and like I said, those first, I'm gonna say 8 9 months, it was very difficult. I mean, it's still, I ain't gonna lie, it's still hard, but like I said, I think I'm a lot better, a lot stronger. And it's not so much the world itself. It's just like I said, you still can't understand how all that happened, how much life is lost. I mean, and I think that's the most difficult part for me is not letting go of what happened, opposed to what's in front of me. That's my issues right that I'm having right now is not letting go of it, and how that could have happened when I try to do, the right thing. And, no matter what I did, it just didn't work out. And, so now I'm just, I'm just thankful to be here at this moment. But at the same time, I think a huge part of me was left in there. And that's the part I find myself trying to go back in and grab some of that and bring it out here so I can move forward. Because, you would think, after being released after so much time, and thinking you're going to die every single day for almost 30 years, in a place that you shouldn't have been. It's just, it's definitely been an adjustment. But like I said, I don't want to complain because, like I said, I know there's still guys in there that are fighting for this opportunity, and deserving of this opportunity who are innocent. So I try not to complain as much, but like I said, it's not as easy as some would think. They give you a little settlement, or they give you a little bit of freedom, and they think that life is just going to be, a bowl of roses, or a bed of roses now, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who was locked up for 6 years, and he told me, he said it was really complicated, but pieces of him, because he was in there for such a long time, pieces of him kind of missed it in a weird way because he got
Yeah.
used to certain things. Is that accurate?
Yes. Very accurate. Very
Wow.
accurate. Very accurate. You know. Um, like I said, I guess I can only speak from my perspective. I'm quite sure a lot of us that go through that are, a lot of things that are familiar to all of us that have been through it. But like I said, just for me, like I said, I just think that, you put in those positions, and like I said, you're sentenced to die in prison. And, I spent, I think 16 years in this one particular cell. And, every day I went in this cell, I'm laying in this bed, I was on the bottom bunk, and I'm looking at this top bunk, the frame underneath. I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is my grave right here, and I'm like, I'm 40, I'm 41, I was 35, and I'm like, I'm gonna die right here in this bed, and it's just like, I'm alive right now, but this is where I'm gonna die at. I'm laying in my coffin, and trying to avoid those thoughts, and believing that, and just wanting to give up and saying, well, what the hell? What should I get up for? If this is it right here, if I'm already in my coffin, why get out of it? But like I said, I just, you try to fight, and like I said, one day at a time, and look forward to hoping that, someone's going to come along and hear you. And fortunately for me, those folks came along and heard me, and they fought for me. And like I said, here I am.
Yeah, for folks who don't know, you had a great team that fought for you. There was some great press. The Philadelphia
Yes,
Inquirer, they would cover it. Larry Krasner comes along, who is really just man oh man. Again, we talk about
yes,
looking at it through the lens of race. Here is a white dude who gets it, who believes in reform. And Larry Krasner is just and I want to get him on the show at some point. He's so incredible. So
yes,
last week or so, you got a settlement of nine some $1 million, whatever it is.
yes.
What what does that mean? What does that feel like? What does it mean when they say, okay, 28 years, here's a couple $1 million?
Um, like I said, I never, Clay, like I said, I never want to sound ungrateful or anything like that. Because like I said, I know people are struggling, and so forth. But for me, it was just more about the closure of it all, because to this case is, it's been hovering on my back for, almost 30 years. So that was the biggest thing for me, was just being able to settle so I can put this to bed and move on best I can. Uh, it's been a little over a week now since the settlement was, released and so forth. And I'm be honest with you, totally honest. It really hasn't hit me, because, like I said, when you don't have that kind of money, you can't envision that kind of money. You know what I'm saying? I've never even been around that kind of money, so I really haven't, like, thought about it. Saying my whole thing has always been about getting this freedom and enjoying life with my family. I was worried about something happening to my father. I mean, I lost one parent. I didn't want nothing happened to my dad before I got out. Was able to get out. So now to be here, and the settlement that they've given me, being able to give back to them, that's first and foremost to me. That's more than anything. Because like I said, for 28 years, it wasn't a day that passed. It wasn't a week, a month, a year that passed where they weren't there. I mean, I call home, and no matter what I asked for, my family provided me. I said I needed this lawyer. He didn't say, well, how much did it cost, or how much did it cost? He said, I'll get him. So it was never a question of anything financially. My dad told me a long time ago, he says, whatever you need, we're going to make sure you have. You just take care of yourself in there. So now that the settlement's coming through, I'm going to return that and make sure that he's taken care of for the rest of his life, as well as my sister. And then whatever I get out of it, so be it. But, and people don't understand, they wouldn't agree with that. They would say, well, you've done the time, but I couldn't have did the time without them support me the way they did. So,
Hmm.
that had to be first and foremost for me. And then, like I said, whatever I get out of it from there, you know, I'm, I'm cool with. I'm cool with that. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I can only imagine nothing can take back what you lost.
right.
I mean, nothing. I mean, yeah. Uh, we talk about reform as somebody who was behind bars, wrongfully behind bars. What does criminal justice reform look like? What's really when you think of reform as somebody who's lived it, what does it look like for you?
I keep hearing about this, justice reform and stuff. And I'm being, I don't even know what that means, because, I think it comes down from the lawmakers and so forth, and just people being held accountable, for their actions, and the fair treatment of all, like I said, with black folks, we tend, like I said, naturally, we tend to end up in prison a lot faster, a lot quicker. Then it's harder for us to get out, and I don't think it, with reform, I think it just has to be looked at in those terms of people being held accountable. And like I said, it takes some compassion, it takes understanding. These people sit on most people that are in charge of these reforms or bringing these reforms about have never even encountered a person in prison or been to a prison, so therefore they won't understand. It's difficult to understand. People are so worried about their careers and so forth, and opposed to um, I guess the human suffering, so to speak, of people in prison. Now, I'm not saying that every guy in jail doesn't deserve to be there or deserve some type of punishment for what they've done and so forth. But at the same time, uh, there are still a lot of guys in there, like I said, who are falsely accused. There are guys deserving of second chances. I mean, sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom to really, understand what life is and what freedom is really about. And I think a lot of guys in there, but they're not getting those second chances. So a lot of those things, different things, have to be looked at. Like I said, this thing, it starts with understanding and compassion and a willingness to, you know, I guess, look at these things and accept them, as opposed to just saying, if we let these guys out, we're going to look bad or look soft on crime. And that's not necessarily the case. Like I said, you first got to understand. I always believe you always first got to understand why a person does what they do to end up in prison in the first place. So I think taking a look at that and then understanding, I think also each case is different. Each case is like I said, unique, I guess. But at the same time, when people are coming from poverty-stricken environments and so forth, naturally, you're gonna do everything you can to survive. So all these things have to be looked at before I think it can really be a proper reform, opposed to just saying we need criminal justice reform and thinking it's going to happen overnight. But I think headway has to be made because, like I said, the prison's just so overcrowded, and with guys in there, like I said, really deserve a second chance.
Well, are the two detectives that treated you so terribly, are they still alive? Do you know? Are they still
You
around?
know,
Are they retired?
Like, listen, I ain't gonna know. I have no idea. I didn't. I haven't followed. I haven't looked into. So you would
Right.
have to lawyers. I really don't know.
I was just curious to know if they were around, would it feel any better if they went to jail, if they were charged, if they were prosecuted for horrific? I mean, Roger King has passed away, but for prosecutors, for police departments who do this heinous things, would it make you feel better if they actually suffered, if there was some kind of repercussion? I mean, legally, not like physically,
Right.
but
I know.
legal repercussions for what they do. That's what his like. You hear these stories, and they're just living their life, like they just nothing ever happens to them.
Right. I mean, initially, if you would have asked me this a couple of years ago, a few years back, I would have gave you a different answer because it was, but at this stage of my life, naturally, you want to see something happen. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't think it's right for these guys to have done what they've done, and because, like I said, there's no deterrence there when these guys are allowed to do what they do and just go on with their lives. So whether it's going to prison, if that's the case, or losing their pensions, or having to pay some type of restitution, I mean, something should be done. I mean, you can't just do this to people and then going about your lives, and because, like I said, it gives them no deterrent as to not to do it again. And that's why a lot of these cops got away with this. That's why there's so many people in prison now, that are coming out and being exonerated because of their actions. So, it has to be some type of a deterrent for future cops and detectives and so forth. Look, we do this, we can get caught, we're going to jail. We're going to lose our pension, but like something has to be done. So in my case, naturally, I would like to see something happen to them. Maybe if they spend a year in jail, 2 years in jail.
I feel like every case that Roger King prosecuted should be investigated. I feel like the DAs involved in the Central Park Five in New York, they had that job for 20 years after they
Yeah,
still had the gig, after they put those innocent black children behind bars. So yeah.
yeah.
And last question, and I want to thank you, sir. I know you don't do a lot of interviews. I want to thank you for talking to my audience. It really means a lot to me, and I just want to know where what do you want to do now? Have you decided it's been a year and a half? What are your aspirations now?
Man, I I'm still trying to figure that one out, man. I know you people, you would think after this much time that I would have an idea which direction I want to go, but I really don't, because I was so worried about getting that case up off me, and and putting that all behind me before I really made any any type of decisions. Because you might not believe it, but for some reason in my mind, I kept saying, "Am I going to end back up in prison?" I mean, I don't know why. I just said no. I don't know. I was so worried about that for some reason. Uh, so when things finally concluded, even though it was over, I knew it was over, but at the same, in my mind, I just couldn't let it go. But now
Trauma.
that now that now that we're past it, I'm just trying to move forward and just living life. Like I said, I'm glad to see my family. My dad's alive, and his birthday is this week, and I'm glad to be able to hear it's his second birthday. I'm able to celebrate now. My sister, watching her daughter grow up. So I'm just looking forward to those things and potentially having my own family at some point.
Yeah.
And just like I said, just taking one day at a time, man. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is there anything you want to leave my audience with? It's a predominantly Black audience, and they really care about issues like this. Is there anything you want to leave them with? Any wisdom?
Well, I mean, I don't know about necessarily wisdom. I mean, I can only say that us as Black folks, a lot of times, not saying that it's necessarily always the case, but a lot of times I think we put ourselves in these positions because, like I said, we're viewed as animals and savages and criminals and so forth, and that's not necessarily the case. But I think the way we carry ourselves and conduct ourselves, it means a great deal. It's sad to say it in this society in these days and times, but we just have to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and the way we conduct ourselves, I think, is very important when we're out here uh, in society, the way we move about in our communities and so forth. So I just think, character means a lot, and having good character and, just expressing ourselves in a positive way to, I guess, get away from the typical stereotype of what's been placed on us for for forever. It seems like. So I just say just be a person of character, and conduct ourselves like people we know we are, and that's strong people.
That's right. That's right. I want to thank you again. I want to thank you again, man. Your story is incredible. I'm sending all my thoughts and prayer just for healing, whatever that looks like. I mean, it's trauma. It's funny how you say you were afraid of going back to jail. It reminds me of enslaved people when they would get freedom, they were afraid they would get recaptured. They were afraid they
Right,
would go back in slavery.
right, right.
In many ways, prison is like slavery. So yeah, I just thank you so much for sharing your
Def-
story. You got to know
Most,
this. I'm grateful, man. I'm really grateful that we had a chance to talk.
most definitely, man. Most definitely.
All right. And forever,
Yeah.
whatever reason, if you want to come on, if you're doing a project, if you're working on something, just let my team know. We'll have you on. You have an open invitation.
Okay, I appreciate that, Clay. Thank you, man.
All
Thank you.
right. All right.
And now.
Thank you so much once again. Chester Hollman, he was behind bars 28 years, and he is now a free man.